Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Carlton People. On today's episode, it's a big one because I've got the final piece of the Almost Blues Brothers with me, and he happens to be a blue abroad. I've got Jules from Spain. Hello, mate.
Hey Tez, how are we?
I'm good. I'm good. I was gonna try and greet you in Spanish, but I feel like it was Mexican, so I won't even bother.
Nah, to be honest with you, I don't even know if I could. I've been here for 5 months, and my Spanish isn't getting too much better. Let's just put it
Wow,
that way.
5 months already. That's crazy.
Yeah, or a bit over 5 months. So yeah, I came on the 28th of June. Now it's what, the 3rd of December. So yeah, nearly 5 months in a week. So time's flying, to be honest with you.
Absolutely, mate. Time flies when you're having fun. How is it all going?
Obviously we had a bit of a chat before, but I've settled in now a little bit more, obviously, and done a fair bit of traveling around Spain and the north and south of Spain, obviously where my partner Belen's from, and which has been great to meet her family finally, and get obviously stuck into the culture and the food particularly, which obviously I'm a big fan of food in general of many cultures, but and then obviously I sort of we went to Amsterdam and Paris only a couple of weeks ago. We spent 4 days in each city. Paris I've been to a few times now, but still you sort of like, because the city's so big, you can go there quite a few times and still see a little bit of different things obviously along the way. And then Amsterdam I haven't been to, and I've heard about it. My sisters have been, obviously Joe and Dan has been as well, so they've told me all about it. And then it was a great 4 days that I spent there as well.
Sick, sick. Well, I'm gonna get stuck right into it because I've got a few questions to ask about being a blue abroad
All
as
right,
well.
let's get
Because
into it.
I've definitely lived through it, but I want to start with you and your
Mhm.
story. How did you become a Carlton fan? Where does it all begin?
So in terms of where it all begins, look, my dad. So obviously I come from a European background, Italian, so I call my dad Papa. Okay. But yeah, it was from then. So pretty much straight away, he was a big fan. He's been to many games throughout, obviously the 70s and 80s, when obviously, and even early 90s when Carlton were a big hit, obviously in the league. So so it sort of started from then. Obviously, just given the scarf, given the Guernsey, and you tag along to games, obviously because it's your dad. Our whole family is a big Carlton big Carlton followers, and we actually don't have all the memorabilia on the wall at my family home at the moment in Melbourne. We've sort of taken it down because my dad and I sort of like painted the walls and everything like that. So he doesn't want to put marks just in case, in the future they do leave, which they're thinking about doing. But yeah, so we have a lot. Like I'm talking like probably like a 10 meter by 8 meter sort of wall. So if you come and
Wow.
think about it in terms of what form of memorabilia we have, like the amount, it's a lot. And obviously my parents used to own a restaurant. And I remember going to the restaurant, particularly on school holidays, and kicking the footy down the back, and the ball would go on the roof and everything like that, and going to climb. I was only like 7, 8, 9 years old at that stage. So I remember like obviously wanting to grow up and play for Carlton. Further down the track, I sort of switched to the round ball because of Dan. To be honest with you, we sort of hit it off in primary school, as you do. I was playing footy, he was playing football, as we call it now, and yeah, I sort of just tagged along and started playing football. But in terms of the restaurant, we sort of have a lot of connection with particularly the old Carlton, particularly in the 90s. A lot of the players used to actually come to our restaurant and have dinner and everything like that, and lunch. We used to go to there. They used to have like I wouldn't say an open training, but it was open to the public anyway. They used to train outside on a Monday night, usually on the outside ovals at, back then it was Optus Oval. So that was sort of like the glory days, sort of, in a way. And then from there, I used to go and tag along. And then after that, we used to go to the institution of Lygon Street and have a feed at Papagino's.
Yeah.
Was the Italian restaurant there. That was like a thing that we used to do every Monday night because that was the day my parents had off in terms of work. So that was the only day. But we used to go to games as well on a regular basis. My dad used to take us along as well, and my mum whenever possible due to work. So yeah, and to be honest with you, I've touched the '95 Premiership Cup.
Wow.
You know, like
Wow.
yeah, they brought the Premiership Cup to the restaurant and had it there. I can't remember if it was for a week or a few days. So yeah, I've got a pretty strong connection to the Carlton Football Club from an early age.
That's huge. So paint the picture for me. Where's the restaurant?
My parents started the restaurant in 1988.
Yep.
Yeah, they left. They sold the business in, I think it was 2001, something like that. But they were in the game for about 14 or so years, something like that. Yeah. So it's in Werribee. So you got Watton Street and Sinnott Street in Werribee. If anyone does know,
Any Werribeans watching?
if anyone beans, the old shop used to be, I think it's called Big Brothers Pizza, something like that at the moment. It's Sinnott Street. It's opposite the McDonald's on the corner. I'm sure if anyone has been in Werribee, you'll know. But then it moved to the main street, which is Watton Street, and they're both parallel to each other. But they're only there for a couple of years at the new restaurant, so to speak. But yeah, we used to have my nonna, my dad's mum, like in the restaurant as well, cooking there as well, my aunties and uncles and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a pretty big like family environment. To be in, to be honest with you, and obviously going there, obviously during on weekends, sometimes having lunch there and everything like that. I didn't really spend too much time with my parents when I was growing up because obviously the work that's involved there. But still, we had a strong connection with Carlton, and sort of they were like the games and whatnot that used to bring us together all at once in a way. Yep. So because of Carlton, we have that in one way, and that's where we have our strong bond and that connection as a family.
So do you remember going to Princess Park and watching games there?
Yeah, I do.
Talk to me about some of your, I don't know, any memories from that stick out?
I have quite a few memories. I was there for the last game, Carlton-Melbourne.
Yep.
So I was there for the last game. I remember it vaguely. I also remember the game where Walker played his first game. I think he played it against West Coast, to be honest with you. He racked up like 26 touches, took a hanger. So that was pretty big for me. So that was in terms of Princess Park. But I remember going there for a lot of when you have like your family days and whatnot, and going there during the school holidays. So I remember that was a big thing. So I remember those days. And then obviously recently, in terms of going there just to go to see practice matches and whatnot. I always enjoy going back there for those kinds of things. I know Dan, I think he spoke about it on the last on his last ep. I know it was one of the last people's eps where we used to go and watch training. It was like obviously high school days or early university days, and we used to go and watch the boys train and everything like that. So so it was pretty big, Princess Park. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got you've built like serious foundations from the club early in your life, because obviously your parents, grandparents, and whatnot have come to Australia, and dating back then, and then you really seem to have a really serious connection from an early age. So you're hooked as it is.
Yeah, I'm big on Carlton, obviously, as you can tell. But even in saying that, obviously, like there's obviously a lot of European families who do come across to Australia, particularly obviously back then, 40, 50, 60 years ago, where, there was only a few clubs where you would go for, particularly number one was Carlton. Like if you're an Italian, you went to Carlton first.
Yep.
Like you went to Carlton, and then from there you might have, gone somewhere else. But if you went to Carlton, that's it. You're stuck with Carlton, and that's who you went through. And obviously throughout the years, we had a lot of, Italian players playing for the club as well. So, now we've got Chera, which is great.
Yeah.
So someone
that definitely helps. I think the club always needs to have some sort of Italian influence. Obviously, Silvagni's there, and Chera's a big one. I think Corazzo was a
Oh,
really
mate.
underrated influence on my childhood growing up.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite players. So, yeah, without a doubt, So, yeah, I love Carrots.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we used to call him. But yeah, just the way he went about it, was just yeah, a real professional. You could tell, particularly like around the traps, you could see he was a big influence on the players.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some of your best memories or early heroes. Like what
Yeah.
sticks out for you? Who are some of the players you latched onto?
So in terms of memories, I remember Vela in '99 prelim.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was there, and I went to the granny as well. So I remember rocking up to the granny. We went to a hotel to get we scalped some tickets. Me and my dad. So yeah, I remember going to a hotel, obviously before the game, and then rocking up to the grounds, and then receiving like a few gifts. I can't remember what the gifts were underneath the seats. I can't remember if they're all like a flag or something like that. But I remember getting that. But the prelim, especially, I remember, and just the chance of Kuda roaring around. I was actually on that forward 50, on the half forward, of that ground where he did take those two clutch marks in the final quarter and kick the two goals that he did. So yeah, and obviously where Whitnell, was it Whitnell? Well, Whitnell kicked it to Murphy, I think. No, Murphy kicked it to Whitnell. And then I remember him like obviously grabbing the mark and then obviously lifting, his hands up in the air in tribulation, sort of. So yeah, it was great to see that. But in terms of players, I love Diesel back in the day. Obviously watching footage and stuff like that. In terms of a player and just his smarts, and I'm very happy that he's back at the club in a big way. But in terms of growing up, I would say the two players would have to be the Fev. Yeah, just the shag. I just love the way he goes about it. On a given day, he might not kick. Obviously, he kicked a lot of goals, but and he had a lot of clutch moments. And some of the goals that he kicked were just freakish over the head, off the ground, from the pocket, 60 meters out on the run from an angle. So some of those moments were spectacular. Obviously, Kim kicking bags against Collingwood was also a positive. But I love, like I said before, so I love those kind of players that sort of go about it in the right way. And in a big way now, I love the way JSOS goes about it because, he's got a bit of talent and he's pretty clean with the ball in hand. But, at the end of the day, he's going to bring it each, minute by minute and as the game goes on, no matter what. So that's what I like about those sorts of players. Obviously, you need the talent, but you need the work ethic as well. So yeah, there's the kind of players that I sort of I speak of fondly.
Yeah, Fev had this crazy ability. Yeah, he had this, like you mentioned it before. Like even if he didn't play well, even if he kicked two, whatever, it would be down on what he'd be capable of. But he'd just find a way to entertain you as well. And very, very few players have a good mixture of talent, personality, and that showstopper, that showmanship as well. And he had it all.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he was probably playing 5 to 6 years too late. I feel like if he started his career 5 to 6 years earlier, there'd be no issues. We never would have got rid of it. But as the world changed and stood for,
it's interesting because it's interesting that you say that because things could be so much different. I know there's even discussions that Kernahang sort of called him in the last hour and had a discussion, said, look, come back in. I know we said we're going to let you go, but come back in. And, by round one, you're going to kick 6-7 goals and everything will be forgotten, But just like the talent that this player had, and even though his work ethic, like he might not have given his work ethic obviously in training. I'm not sure about that, if he did or he didn't. But game day, he gave it everything, People forget how he used to actually chase players down. He's explosive. He was ferocious. And I remember going to, I think it was me, my dad, Pilar, Joe and Rennie, Joe's dad. We went to the 150th, the actual 150th celebration where it was Victoria versus the rest of the states, the All-Stars. And mate, Fev was not only the best player on that day, I think he kicked 7 or 8, but he was the show. If he was the one that took over, okay, like he was the one that, and Judd was playing that day, and he was there. Obviously, he was playing for Carlton at that stage as well, and obviously it was, the ground was full of talent, and full of talent on display. But he's the one that went to the next level. He was, in terms of a player at his time.
It was like the more the crowd was there and the more of a spectacle it was, the more he rose to the occasion, which is why it was so sad that after how long we built with him in such a shit team, when we finally started playing finals, we just didn't get to see it with him in the finals. I mean, you can look back all you like, the future and the now is all you really have. But I think just more about I don't think there's any Carlton supporter that watched the Fev days that doesn't love him and appreciate him,
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I feel like as if, even now I go on YouTube sometimes and I just watch I think it was a game against Essendon. I can't remember exactly what year. It might have been 06, something like that. I think we were 40 something points down, 6 in the second quarter, halfway or 3/4 through the second quarter. At 8, and Fev hadn't kicked a goal, but by the same stage at that point in the fourth quarter, he kicked 8. So virtually in a half of football, he kicked 8 and he's turned it around, the game around, and we ended up winning by 15 or so points. So he just had that influence, particularly on other players.
Yeah. So we move into this new era. We've gone through a couple of rebuilds. Let's talk a bit about what you're seeing at the moment. 2015, I feel like, is when we went through the next wave. 2005, we started the first one. Or 2006, drafted Murphy and etc. That whole era is pretty much gone. It's gone. Ed Kerno's still around, but he came a little later in that group. But we move into this next group now. What are your observations on what's happened and what's going on, and how are you feeling as a supporter?
So obviously the 05, 06 period, in terms of we did have our first rebuild per se. It was sort of forced on us, wasn't it? In terms of obviously draft selections and stuff like that. We didn't have it for a couple of years, and we started obviously picking up players like Mick Martin and Harford and the like, who was only going to be there sort of like how we did it now, to be honest with you, in the last 5 years or so. We sort of picked up those players who were just going to be a bit part until obviously the younger players sort of come up. I don't know back then if that was the thinking process around it. Obviously I was only, 12, 13, 14 years old at around that era. So I don't really know the thinking behind it. But obviously it wasn't the correct way to go. Obviously you can have all the talent in the world, but at the end of the day, you need to have the processes and the work ethic and everything in place. Not only in a playing sense, but you need to have everything aligned from the committee and across the whole club. So obviously now, in a way, I think we sort of have the foundation in terms of talent on the list. Obviously, we have an abundance of first, second round draft picks, and we've traded in over the last couple of years, I would say, decent players that can add to that. But you have a look at across all the 18 clubs in the league, and a lot of clubs don't trade in the quality players. Yeah, they do. They might add 1 or 2. But it's not like every year they go out and target, an A grade player every year. It comes from your draft picks.
It's got to come from within.
Yeah, it's got to come from within. So it comes from your draft picks, and then from there you develop them, and then once they're ready, and it comes from a great culture. It comes from a good family. If it's like a kid, essentially. If you have a good family, you're going to have more than likely you're going to have a good kid. Growing up and understanding the world and how it is, and the work ethic that comes with it, and and being educated if that's how they want to go down that path, and whatnot. Just in terms of the level of respect and everything like that. Obviously, which is probably the main and important things. So respect and discipline. And I feel like as if the club, in terms of the last a couple of months, is sort of from the outside looking in. And I know you had the special with Luke Sayers only a couple of weeks ago now, and the way he spoke I think Pommy had him for a bit in terms of his question. I know we had Pommy on our podcast, and we sort of spoke to him about it during the week. I don't think it's out yet. So sorry about that. If this does
Joe's
drop,
going to be happy to hear that.
Yeah. If this does drop to before then, I sort of had a cheeky swipe at him only a couple of days ago in our group chat. So sorry, Joe, to throw you under the bus. Just in terms of the way Luke Sayers spoke then, and obviously, for him just to connect to us, the people that I'm obviously yourself, big credit to you, Terry, as well. But to him to connect to us, the people, which, in grand scheme of things, we're like, the blue collars, you know what I mean? Like in a way of like the media world. So for him to connect to us is like, it's a big deal, and I feel like as if it's the way forward. So in terms of his networking and his connection with all lines of the Carlton family, which is great. I feel like as if it should happen. And I really like the connection between people. I'm a big believer in talking, and particularly talking in person. I know, this is a great way to go about it in the world. Obviously, it's not ideal that, potentially down the track, to be in the studio. For me, the connection that you have with the touch and, you can sort of see the body
100%.
and everything like that. It's a different level of connection.
Mm-hmm.
But in saying that, the work ethic and the structures that he's put into place with the likes of Brian Cook and the way Michael Voss and even the assistant coaches with the likes of Hansen and Hamill and whatnot have sort of spoken. I'm very optimistic, but I'm still being very tight-lipped about next year.
I feel you, man.
I think we have to, as a football club and as a fan base, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like we needed to. Well, I think the fans knew, but I feel like there needed to be like we needed to humble ourselves a little bit and not just talk like we have been, because we've been talking to sell hope. And look, it made sense with rebuilds and years gone on. Whereas I get a different feeling this time. It's not just talk. It's about it is about the work. Brian Cook's an interesting one, because I think one of the things we've tried to do for a long time is, whether it's a player, coach, administrator, it's always been about bringing in someone who will hopefully have potential to develop into this thing. I remember when Kane Little came across, he'd obviously come from Richmond, great commercial background, and it was like, oh, well, he's going to be a great CEO. It was his first CEO gig. Whereas Brian Cook's like, for the first time in a while, it was like, no, this person has done it. They know what to do, and they're going to apply what they know to us. And it was almost like a humbling experience. So I'm with you. There is a different feel. And to be honest, they had no choice. They had to do this, because 2021, I was going back and watching like the reviews, and I've been watching the content throughout the year just to get some ideas of what happened, and now that everything's settled down and planned for next year. And mate, this year was a fucking shit show.
Yeah. I feel like as if throughout the course of this season, like obviously we didn't start great, but then we had a bit of a purple patch, before the halfway marker, and then obviously after that, obviously we announced a review, and then obviously since then it sort of went downhill in terms of the way Teague was managed. People have their opinions about that, and obviously no matter what happens, the media are going to jump on it, and sort of make a story out of it, however it is. But yeah, I just like the way Brian Cook is. I've seen a couple of interviews, the way he speaks and the way he conducts himself, and I've also watched some interviews that he's had in the past, at West Coast and Geelong. Obviously he's done it, but he's done it at two different clubs too. Okay, so he's done it for a long period of time, but like I said, he's done it at a couple of different clubs, so he's managed two different types of cultures as well. And then in saying that, he sort of, people ask him, I know some questions people ask him, about when we're going to win our next premiership, or when can you see us winning our next premiership and everything like that. And, is that going to be the level of success that you want to see next year, or, in 2 years' time or 3, is that going to be the benchmark? And it's sort of about, he sort of explains it sort of like the way it's about the journey. You know what I mean? It's, it's the way you go about it, because if you don't have the right way, and if you're not aligned, then you're not going to get there. You know, so that's sort of like the way he explains it. And I sort of like that sort of analogy because it's true, you know. And I know he explains it in another way. He sort of explains it like, you know, in the past, the Carlton Football Club has had a way of doing it, but it doesn't mean everyone has been aligned and on the same page and all at the same time as well, which is also really important. You can sort of be aligned at different stages, but if you're not aligned at the same time for a long period of time to be able to have that level of sustained ability in terms of what you're doing, then you're not going to get that level of success. And he sort of explains it like a freeway. You know, you want everyone coming onto the on ramps and all being on, you know, the same freeway or the same highway all at once, and not you know, going off on any exit. You know, so that's sort of the way he explained it, and I feel like as if it's a good way to explain such a thing.
I love the honesty about just things like, for example, the subcommittees. He was saying we've got like 16, like they've got to be condensed. And he even touched on things like, people getting in other people's ways. Like, no, everyone's got to have a defined role. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm very confident about, from an organizational point of view, the structures are going to be in place and the off field will actually be taken care of. Now it's really just, and you know, it's the 3rd of December today. Today's the day that they've announced that we're officially debt free. So now we tick the boxes there. Organization, the people, tick. Debt-free, tick. The focus is now purely on, you know, sustaining the off-field success, obviously with sponsorships and finances and whatnot, and the development of Icon Park. But now it really becomes a football club, a football program. We don't have to worry about anything else but getting the job done on field.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic about next year and the way forward. Yeah. Obviously, in terms of fingers crossed, obviously there are a couple of additions in Hewitt and Chera can have a big year next year. Hopefully Williams can, you know, not spend too much time in the midfield. I feel like as if he can potentially, you know, in some form or some capacity. Hopefully Dow and the like and O'Brien can step up again. I know they had a bit of a purple patch later in the year when they did come in. And then, yeah, you just need a lot of our younger players to come on again, and the likes of, you know, Cripps and Sard and, you know, mature players, just to keep that, you know, obviously help with their development, but then keep their level of performance as well. And I feel like as if we could potentially have a breakout year next year. I know I saw some things online where some professionals and, you know, in terms of analysts and whatnot around the football world were sort of speaking that we could make, I think it was between 4th and like 7th or 4th of 8th next year. I think they were sort of, they were saying, you know, so, and in terms of talent on our list, we could, you know, our defense, people forget our defense on talent. And in terms of like Wiedering, and obviously Doherty and Nunes and like, you know, obviously Jones, but Jones is obviously no longer in the team. And we touched on it in a big way on our podcast midweek when it does drop, Joe. So again, another bit of swing at him. But yeah, you know, the talent's there. Even obviously midfield now, I feel like as if our weakness was our midfield. Obviously, we like to Hewitt and Chera now. That's going to help. I still feel when I say we lack something, I still feel we lack maybe a little bit of X factor. So in terms of like explosiveness and poise and skill, like that sort of like, and a lot of teams have it now, a player that can sort of go forward and midfield whenever you want. So if you look at like the big teams, you know, that Martin or Bontempelli or Petrarca, that sort of player. So we'll see in terms of, you know, but the game evolves, you know. We'll see how the game evolves and how we want to play as well. So I don't think we need a player like that. But obviously with the game being that way at the moment, it's sort of like that. But in saying that, I feel like as if we do have a player like that, it's just whether they go there. I feel like as if Stocker can sort of play that role. I've said it for a year or so now. I feel like as if he has that sort of aggression, and he has that upper body strength and that core. Mate, he can push people off one-handed, no problem. And I still feel like as if he has that skill and poise both sides of the body as well. When he does go into the midfield, I feel like as if he will.
Yeah.
I feel like as if he has that level of ability to be able to do it. So fingers
Yeah.
crossed, maybe. If not, then he still has a role to play in defense as well. He has that ability too, as you've seen.
100%. I mean, for me, I just think it's all there. We just haven't had the right structure for all of them to buy into to get the job done. And the structure and the system is what's going to allow the long-term success for me. I just think there's super talented players across all lines of the field. I reckon if you're a new coach, like if you're Michael Voss and you've got, this is your new job, this is your new group, you got
Yeah.
and I know we're Carlton supporters, so we're biased, but in terms of young spine, all at a similar age, like they're only 4 or 5 years apart from the oldest to the youngest, if that. I mean,
Yeah,
you're talking about the best young spine in the game. The rest of the pieces will you got to figure out how to get the most out of them, but the core is there.
Yeah. Look, like you said, you hit it in the head. The likes of Mackay, obviously Coleman, All-Australian. Wiedering arguably should have been All-Australian the last year or so in particular, if not the last 2 years. I think he'll go on another level again. And he'll be All-Australian this year without a doubt. Obviously, you've got Charlie, obviously riddled by injury the last couple of years, but everyone's seen his talent and what level he can go to. Just obviously just needs to get over his injuries and then obviously see a level of consistency in his game. You got De Koning in terms of a young up-and-coming ruckman. You got Pitto as well, which I feel like as if he's still a decent ruckman. I just feel like as if De Koning has a bit more X factor and flexibility around the ground, which I think is vital. And who knows? They could go in tandem. We don't know. We haven't really seen it for a long period of time, so it could happen.
Yep.
And then obviously you got Young down back, who's only about 23 years of age, and obviously we've seen him not do it on a consistent basis at the Western Bulldogs, but you've also seen him do it in finals. Which is for me that's paramount in terms of what level head he is, and his talent that he has available. And then obviously we've got Walsh and then and the like as well. And obviously all the other bits and pieces that we have, I feel like as if now that we've got Mollop through the door, he has a lot more X factor going in forward and being able to hit targets in the forward 50. I was watching a mic'd up little video. I can't remember what his assistant coach was.
Tim Clark.
Tim Clark during the week. And one of his comments was, "Oh, mate, can't you, like, you're going to be like frothing at the lips, like seeing Motlop, hit you up in the forward 50, So you can just see like he's good either side of his on foot and the talent that he has. I feel like as if we sort of missed that sort of small forward craft. I know we had Eddie Betts, but obviously he was sort of at the twilight of his career. Yeah, and we sort of haven't seen a lot of Durden. Honey, I'm a big fan of, but he's sort of like that, that sort of medium type as well. He's pretty good overhead, and he still has a bit of X factor with his pace and his nous around goal as well, which I love. And I think he can pinch hit in the midfield as well, which is going to be good to see as well.
So let's talk a little bit about the potty, because this has been, I guess, in many ways, the last few years have been like the evolution of the fans. We've had online platforms. We've evolved from online forums to Facebook groups to Instagram pages. We now have YouTube and we now have podcasts, and the Carlton community as a whole really leads the way in terms of the number of fan podcasts. You guys obviously blew up this year and made your mark and stepped into the game this year. What I love about the three of you is it's so authentic listening to the three of you speak, or whoever's on. If you've got a fourth or a fifth, like it's so organic. I don't really watch. I mean, there's only so much content you can consume, but I always make sure to listen to you guys because it's always a perfect listen for me in the car. So, how have you found the podcast world?
Yeah, to be honest with you, Tez, I've loved it. I love getting on and doing it, particularly like. I love the podcast world in terms of, because I listen to a few different podcasts, not so much sport related, but I do listen to other things and the like, just in terms of like mental health and other things like that. which is sort of big at the moment. But I love it. Particularly, I love doing it with Joe and Daniel. Obviously, I've known them since, like, I've known Joe since I was young, since obviously I'm a couple of years older than Joe. But his parents are best friends with my parents. So I've known him since I was 2 years old or something like that. His sister's best friends with my two younger sisters. So we've been catching up like once a week, if not twice a week, for obviously since the last 5 months, for I don't know how long, 27, 28 years of my life,
You know what's crazy? You're like, what we have now is, your kids will be able to watch. Like, imagine watching your dads talking about what was going on, in the golden era. Like, your children and their children. It's a fascinating concept that we have. It's not really about. It is about now, but the future generations will be able to look back and watch their family members. It's never been possible like this.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting because, like, I haven't really thought about it in that way, but like now that you've said it, it's true. Obviously, and like obviously I'm assuming obviously me and Joe, we're going to be, best friends since, obviously until, the end, I would say.
Of course.
And obviously we're going to have, if we don't kill each other, and or if he doesn't kill me after giving him a bit of a swipe. But obviously he's going to, so we're going to have kids, and then our kids are going to be able to listen to it, and then see how we were back then, and in terms of what we used to do and our love for the club and everything like that. So yeah, it's a pretty big thing that we're doing in a way. And then obviously with Daniel, I've known him since primary school, since prep. I remember taking a hanger over him in prep. And then obviously converting to
He's gonna love that. He's gonna love that.
I think he mentioned it in our first ep, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
In our first ep together. I think it was one of his memories, like how we met. So I remember doing that obviously back in the day. And then, now obviously friendships with Dan, like primary school together, high school together, university together. We played junior football together, some senior football together as well. And then, so we've been together since 5-6 years old, so just that friendship and that bond that we have. And then obviously Joe sort of met Dan like along the way, obviously through me. And then, that sort of free sort of way, like, friendship that we have begun, and we went to games together, go out together, did various things with our friendship groups together, been on holidays together.
That's awesome.
So it's really one of those things. Yeah, it's pretty special that particularly like what we're doing. Obviously thankful you, Tev, for us to be able to do it for your network. But yeah, for us, it's pretty special for us to do it together. When Joe asked me, I'm like, no worries, I'll do it.
Makes so much sense because you do it anyway. Like you're probably on the phone to each other after games or texting in the group chat. You can do it anyway.
I'll put it this way: not only are we doing this like on our podcast, we do it through our messenger anyway. Like even throughout the course of the week. Then after the games, we speak about it. Probably not once, but twice. And when we are in person and we do catch up, we'll speak about it again, about what we do and everything like that, or how the club is going. What are they doing? What players in the trade period we're looking at? What draft picks, and which player should be playing where? Talk about the injuries and whatnot. So it's something that we do just on a regular basis. So and we sort of obviously when we are together, you can see that. I think Pommy during the week. I don't know if it was in the podcast or at the ends of the podcast. We did have Pommy on. He said just how it was just like a pretty chilled sort of environment, and it is. We're just like friends talking to each other. That's sort of how we are.
It's really what it is.
Yeah, and we do sort of go at each other depending on different opinions and stuff like that. But we don't take any hard feelings towards each other. It's just we have different opinions and we get on with it. So, but it's a great thing that we're doing, and obviously, like I said, we're very thankful for you to be able to give us this opportunity.
Yeah, man. Of course. It's just the way of it doesn't work unless we have a big group of us doing it, for me anyway. Before I let you go, I've got to get a prediction. You need to give me a year that we lift up this next premiership. What's it going to be? We're going to look back on this video and see how right or wrong you were.
Okay. So I sort of had I don't think it's going to be next year, but I sort of said to Joe and Dan during the week. I don't know if it was over in the podcast or it might have been in the podcast, to be honest with you,
Good.
or if it was in the message. But obviously, with everything that especially like Doherty's gone through with the knee injuries and now through his treatment with cancer, going through his second time, I just hope and pray that we lift the Premiership Cup when he's playing.
Yeah.
That's just like one of the things, because I feel like as if he's been through a lot and it'd just be very fitting for him to be able to do that. I said next year. I think I said in the podcast next year, but like I don't know if it's going to be next year because I sort of retracted, I think, in the podcast or when I was messaging it. But I said I'd hope it would be, but I wouldn't go past 2023, to be honest with you. I feel like as if next year might be the year we sort of, obviously we push on and become better, but 2023, I feel like as if will be the year where we'll make the granny and we'll lift that Premiership Cup for sure.
I love it. I think there's something in that. Wiedering was the first draft pick of the build. He wears number 23, year 2023. I don't know. I'm just looking for something. So,
I'm liking it.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. Jules, what a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time. I'm really grateful to have come into your world, or you come into I'm glad we crossed paths, and it's been great journey. And mate, we've got many more years of talking about what's going on. So all the best in Spain. We'll definitely see you soon. And thanks again, brother.
Done. Thank you very much. We'll catch up soon.